windows there are bulletproof. Okay? So, if you want a venue where you can feel secure, choose the Champaign Salon of the Manila Hotel. Okay, that is if there's any threat, but I'm sure you have no threat at all to your existence. So with me again is our former press secretary, Sunny Coloma, Sunny, yes, and our present guest resource person. In today's KAPIHAN SA Manila Hotel is the director of PHIVOLCS, Teresito Bacolcol. And let me welcome Director Bacolcol. Welcome to the KAPIHAN SA Manila Hotel. Let me make the announcement that the regular KAPIHAN SA Manila Hotel is being held every Tuesday. Last time it was Wednesday because that's a very special arrangement because of the topic that we discussed during that KAPIHAN. So, what are we going to discuss today? Well, we'll discuss about the smog, what will happen to Metro Manila and our urban centers if this smog recurs. Not only in Metro Manila, but maybe in Metro Cebu and other urban centers. What caused the smog? And until now, there's still activity at the Taal volcano. And Mayon also exhibited some disturbances. So we will also discuss that. And lastly, what if the big one, the movement of the West Valley Fault happened during our lifetime? We will also ask about that and what is the preparedness being done? What are the preparations being done by government? That's what we hope to ask the OCD, the Office of Civil Defense, which is the primary implementer of our National Disaster Risk and Management body. Okay, so I will shoot the first question and then Secretary Coloma will do the follow-up and ask his own questions. So about this smog, Director, I read one time that in Beijing, they practically closed the entire city because of the smog. The industrial waste are too much that the visibility is almost zero, if not zero. Will that happen in Metro Manila or any urban center? What caused them, and what should be done by government and the private sector to ward off or to ensure that this situation will not happen in our country?
Okay, thank you, sir. Yung smog po kasi that we experienced last Friday was not related to Taal volcano eruption or not related to the emission of sulfur dioxide. So it was a totally different phenomenon. It's just that nagkaroon po ng maraming yung fumes coming from the vehicles, coming from the industries, and other pollutants hindi po makaangat because of what pag-asa of thermal inversion. So it's the same phenomenon that also happening in Taal volcano. Ang hindi lang makaangat would be the steaming with sulfur dioxide. So it formed VAG in Taal volcano, but in Metro Manila it formed smog. Again, because of thermal inversion. Ngayon, anong mangyayari if we will experience the Beijing situation? So siguro, siguro we have to, kapag zero visibility sa Metro Manila, then we have no choice but probably, I don't know, suspend, probably magkaroon tayo ng lockdown. If you've noticed, during the pandemic lockdown, masyadong malinis yung hangin ng Metro Manila. So we'll probably do that. I don't know. Depende po yan sa mga LGUs natin. But siguro ang magandang gawin would be to make sure na yung mga vehicles natin are properly maintained. Dapat strong yung yung emission testing natin. Yung sa LTO, they should make sure na yung mga sasakyan flying on the roads natin sa Metro Manila ay sumusunod po sa batas.
Yeah, Director, this is a good opportunity for science education among our people. So you mentioned the term thermal inversion in relation to the trapped particulate matter, no? Yung mga pollutants na hindi hinangin na pataas, no? Gaano kadalas ba nangyayari itong thermal inversion, and are there triggering factors for thermal for this phenomenon?
Okay, so explain po natin muna kung ano yung thermal inversion. We have a normal layer sa atmosphere natin. We have warm air and then cool air, and then as you go towards the upper part, naging cooler air. Now, with thermal inversion, you have the cool air, warm air, and then cool air. So our pollutants, for example, fumes coming from the vehicles, hindi po sila, wala pang vertical dispersion because they cannot move up because it's being trapped by the warm layer during thermal inversion. Now, according to PAGASA, yung thermal inversion, usually, it's hindi siya regular but it happens from time to time. And as you go towards the colder months, usually towards December, malimit pong, nagkakaroon po ng thermal inversion.
Yeah, pero in recent memory, wala naman po tayo naalala na ganyang phenomenon serious enough to warrant suspension of classes like what happened last Friday, no? So, tama po kayang sabihin na sadyang dumadami yung mga pollutants.
In fact, I remember a few years back, meron na ring haze sa Metro Manila. It was attributed to thermal. Hindi lang nagiging popular yung term na thermal inversion. Ngayon kasi, sumabay yung Taal Volcano. So, people attributed this to Taal Volcano. In fact, yung haze and yung smog na nakikita natin sa Metro Manila is a halos everyday occurrence yan. If you go outside, nakikita mo yung haze kasi, again, hindi makakaangat yung pollutants natin vertically. So, in fact, a few years back, I remember, meron na rin ganito pong phenomenon. It's just that na-highlight ngayon because people thought that the haze that they saw last week came from Taal Volcano. And everybody panicked, and yung LGUs natin, they suspended classes, so nagiging na-emphasize lang this time.
So yung mga pollutants, karamihan ay galing sa mga emission ng mga sasakyan. At nangyari sa Beijing, na talagang zero visibility. Hindi lang ang sasakyan, galing sa industrial, sa industries yung mga pollutants. Kasi coal ang gamit nila doon. Siyempre ayaw nating mangyari yan dito sa ating bansa. Pero kung mangyari yan, ang sinasabi mo, possibility, kung zero ang visibility, talagang lockdown or tigil pasada, tigil ang biyahe, kasi ma-aksidente ang dadanasin ng tao. As a matter of fact, di ba nag-suspend ang mga eskwelahan? Sinususpend ng schools? Because of we want to save our children from suffering from asthma, whatever, respiratory problems, no? So alam na natin ito yung mga possible consequences. Ano yung dapat natin gawin para hindi natin sapitin ang ganitong resulta na magkaroon pa tayo ng zero visibility, may lockdown, stop the transportation, etc., etc. What should be done from your studies, if any, to reduce the pollutants? hybrid ba? Lahat na, hybrid. Bilisan ang electric, ang sale ng manufacture and sale of electric vehicles. Should we ban the all coal plants altogether because they also contribute a lot to pollution?
Siguro sir, for example, if there's smog, dapat may prepare tayo na face mask. But of course, that's palliative. Temporary solution lang po yan, band-aid. So siguro mas maganda if we really have stringent measures on like smoke belching, for example. And I think LTO, ginagawa naman yata po ng LTO, and before you can register my smoke belching test. So apart from that, yun lang po yung, kasi that's already beyond my expertise
Yes,
as a volcanologist, as a geologist.
Einstein said that it's insanity if you keep on doing the same thing
That's right.
and expect a different result, and that is insanity according
That's
to
right.
Einstein. We should not belabor the point with Director because iba pa yung expertise na kailangan natin on the matter of
Earthquakes and volcanoes.
anti-pollution measures, no. But we are bringing this out to the public, no, because we all suffer. Lahat naman tayo apektado. Pinagmamas na nga tayo, di ba? Hindi naman COVID-19, pero pinagmamas na tayo because of the pollution. So, we're bringing this out to the public because we have to go ask the government to really help out and do something. LTO will have to do its job, you know. in
Siguro,
reducing pollution.
Senator Joey, we could ask Director Bacolcol to shed further light on the smog at saka yung bug. Because initially, there was a thought that the volcanic activity in Taal brought on the volcanic haze, no, or the fog from Taal. But according to findings, empirically, yung hangin hindi patungong Metro Manila. So, what if nagbago yung ihip ng hangin at yung bug ay patungo dito, no? So, there are corollary measures that need to be done by us.
Okay, so kapag hindi lang to sa Metro Manila, but people probably around Taal Volcano who might experience VAG or makakahalanghap ng VAG. Again, VAG is volcanic smog, and again, I'll explain muna kung bakit nagkakaroon ng VAG. So, when you have hot volcanic materials coming into contact with water, nagkaroon po ng steaming or degassing tawag natin dyan. And since may tubig sa Taal Volcano, so malimit mangyari ito. And with the degassing, with the steaming comes with, kasama po dyan yung particulates and water vapor plus sulfur dioxide. Now, kapag mataas po yung steam natin, wala pong problema kasi po yung sulfur dioxide can easily be dispersed. And in fact, kapag umuulan, madali po siya ma-dissolve. Ang nangyari lamang, kapag hindi makaangat yung steam, and it would stay on the lower level, and if there's wind, for example, depends sa prevailing wind direction, it would go to populated areas. Now, sino yung, if for example, if we'll go to the north, because Metro Manila is on the north, and ano dapat yung gagawin ng mga tao? Same thing na advice din namin for the people living around Taal Volcano, that first, iwasan yung outdoor activities kung maaari. And kung hindi talaga maaring hindi lumabas, then they have to protect themselves by wearing face masks, N95 kung maaari. And kapag nakalanghap ng maraming sulfur dioxide, maraming asupre, then they have to drink plenty of water kasi po madali po ma-dilute yung sulfur dioxide with water. And kapag malala na talaga, for example, nahirapan ng huminga, then they have to see medical doctors.
Meron yung pinapakita sa atin dito na magandang visual on bug and who are affected and with health effects. No? Its director already started explaining it's a volcanic smog and what we could do, who are the most affected. So, dapat lang siguro ay ma-intensify natin yung awareness ng ating publiko for us to be prepared for such eventuality and to know how to respond eventually. Pero meron yatang gustong tanungin si Senator Joey na medyo long-term yung prospect but with very serious ramifications.
Sa ating mga taga-subaybay ng Kapihan sa Manila Hotel, nararapat lang na babanggitin natin itong issue na maaring mangyari. Ang unang akong tanong, meron bang possible connection itong volcanic eruptions sa maaring mangyari sa West Valley Fault? Itong West Valley Fault, alam natin itong fault yung gawang sa lupa mula Bulacan hanggang Laguna hanggang Cavite, na mayroong studies na pagka talagang may magnitude 7.2 na earthquake, and the volcanic eruption can also cause earthquakes, di ba? May mga study na kapag 7.2 ang siyang tumama dito sa Metro Manila, magmo-move yung West Valley Fault at ang study na mamamatay sa kaniyang study 34,000 pagka in-include mo yung Laguna and neighboring provinces, abot ng 48,000 deaths. And then ang injuries abot ng mga hundreds of thousands, not to mention the damage to properties, to buildings, to houses, bridges. That will really paralyze the entire Metro Manila and even neighboring provinces. Rescue will be difficult because how can you rescue when you cannot move people from one place to another? This is a very grim scenario, but this is already been part of a study that these are the things that can happen when the West Valley Fault moves, when an earthquake of 7.2 magnitude happens. Ngayon, may connection ba itong mga volcanic eruption sa possible movement sa West Valley Fault? At kung wala man, ay ano ang mga maaring mangyari batay sa karanasan o pag-aaral kung kailan nagmo-move itong West Valley Fault na ito? Okay, Director.
Yes, thank you for that question, sir. Anyway, yung vulkan, when it's about to erupt, marami pong lindol yan. In fact, prior to the 2020 eruption of Taal volcano, we recorded in a day 125 volcanic earthquakes prior to its eruption in 2022. We recorded that in December. It erupted in January, and a month before, meron tayong earthquakes na itala, which is around more than 120 earthquakes. Ngayon, itong mga lindol na to would be small in magnitudes, and yung makakaramdam lang ng lindol na to, either be our instruments or yung mga tao living around the vicinity of the volcano. Ngayon, kung the volcano would be able, Taal volcano would be able to trigger a magnitude 7.2 earthquake, hindi po pwede kasi iba po yung trigger ng volcanic eruption, iba din po yung trigger ng lindol for the West Valley Fault. Now, pwedeng opposite yung mangyari, an earthquake can trigger a volcanic eruption. And it happened in Indonesia before. There was a big earthquake and then it followed, and what followed afterwards was a volcanic eruption. There's still ongoing debate if the 1990 Luzon earthquake triggered the 1991 Pinatubo eruption. So, may nagsasabi kasi na naalog daw yung magma chamber of Mount Pinatubo as a result of this strong shaking produced by the 1990 Luzon earthquake. So, a year after, it erupted. So, pwede po yan. And again, we've seen empirical evidence in Indonesia, a strong earthquake followed a volcanic eruption that followed a strong earthquake. Now, yung ano pong another question, sir, yung anong mangyari or
May sa pag-aaral, the fault moves
Okay.
within a range of 400
To 600.
to 600 years.
Okay. So basically,
Are we in that range already?
Okay.
When was the last time that the West Valley Fault moved?
Okay, so based on our studies, the last time it moved was in 1658. So if you add 400 years, because based on our studies, it would move every 400 to 600 years. Now, so if you add 1658, if you add the lower limit, kasi it's a range 400 to 600 years, of course we have to prepare for the lower limit. We will not prepare for the 600 years. We would assume that it would move within the 400 years. And if you add 1658 plus 400 years, that would be 2058. And if you give or take several decades, because it's not an exact science, syempre may uncertainty yan. That's the reason why we're saying that we're right for the big one. And as we go closer to the lower limit, which is 2058, the probability of having another magnitude 7.2 earthquake probability will become higher.
Therefore, we should make it clear that when you say we are ripe, or the West Valley Fault is ripe for movement
Yes, that's right.
already, even if the 400 years will be on 2058, we are now only 2023, so it's still 15 years to go. But we don't have to wait. You're saying we don't have to wait na. Hindi, wala pa naman yung 400 years. We have to be conservative and just be prepared, because science is not exact that it will really move on the 400 between 400 years and 600 years. So it can happen anytime.
That's right, that's right.
And that's why we have to bring this out to the public, to the government. And that's why we also invited OCD here, because OCD is the primary agency as far as disaster risk and reduction is concerned. But we will have a time with the OCD. Unfortunately, the representative has not yet arrived. No, so again, para lang hindi tayo alarmist. We're not being an alarmist. But I think we have to convey this to our people, especially to the national and local governments. Because ang local governments, siya yung in charge sa mga building permits, yung mga skyscraper na yan, hindi makapagtatayo kung walang permit from the local governments through their building officials who are supposed to know what kind of structure should be built that can withstand a 7.2 or 7.5 earthquake magnitude along that range, no? Based on what the studies, let's go back to the studies that have been made. Can you elaborate more on the studies and who conducted these studies, so that we can say that these studies came from the experts?
Okay, so we conducted a study in 2004. It's an MMRI study conducted by JICA, MMDA, plus PHIVOLCS and the PWH. And the estimated casualties for during the 2004 study, katulad ng nabanggit po kanina, sir, would be around 34,000 deaths. And then in 2013, we updated the study together with Australian aid. And we included Greater Metro Manila area, GMMA. This would include provinces in Pampanga, in Bulacan, around Metro Manila, and the expected casualty rose to 48,000. And the injuries would be around 110,000. Of course, kapag hindi maagapan yung injuries natin, they would be added to the casualties. And the expected buildings that would collapse for residential buildings would be 13%. For 10 to 30-story buildings, it would be around 11%. And for 30 to 60-story buildings, it would be around 2%. So mas marami if the West Valley Fault would move, karamihan ng affected would come from yung mga buildings, residential buildings. Kasi if the epicenter is very close, it would be the residential buildings that would be most affected. If the epicenter of an earthquake is far, it would be the high-rise buildings. That's the reason why in 1968, August 2, 1968, kasiguran earthquake, malayo po yung kasiguran, that's around 300 kilometers away from Metro Manila. It's in Aurora, but the Ruby Tower in Binondo collapsed and more than 200 people died. Kasi it's a far-field earthquake, malayo, but it's the high-rise buildings that will be affected.
So latest study, 2013,
2013.
48,000 deaths, injuries about 110,000. Can you repeat yung sa damage to
Buildings.
residences and buildings,
Okay.
so that the members of the media can jot them down?
Okay. So if there is a magnitude 7.2 earthquake, for residential buildings, around 13% would be heavily damaged. For 10 to 30-story buildings, it would be 11%. And for 30 to 60-story buildings, it would be 2% of them would be heavily damaged.
And then in terms of peso, mga trillion.
That's right. Wala pa akong dito, but it would be trillions of pesos worth of damages.
I think an important aspect of this scenario is really disaster preparedness. And I recall that in 2010, when we were just coming into the new administration, there was the law on the NDRRMC was just newly enacted. And they really focused it on disaster risk reduction, which means being proactive and taking preemptive measures. And then risk management. And the other aspect is placing more responsibility on local governments. Now, speaking of local governments, I recall also that Metro Manila Development Authority, being the local government for the entire metropolis, started stocking up some equipment and paraphernalia do sa mga major intersections, like do sa may JP Rizal and Santa Mesa. May parang mga provisions na dun mga emergency jackets and equipment. So siguro ito yung tinutukoy ni Director na civil preparedness aspect. Baka you could suggest na baka pwede tayo imagine ng certain exercises that could be done to heighten the preparedness of our people.
Okay. Again, at the national level, yung NDRRMC po natin have produced tools that would help the LGUs prepare their comprehensive land use plans. And also, NDRRMC is conducting a quarterly earthquake drill. And ang laking tulong po ng quarterly earthquake drill na to sa kamalayan ng ating mga kababayan when it comes to earthquakes. Pati yung anak ko, hindi ko naman tinuruan, but there was an earthquake before galing sa Mindoro, and we felt it at our house. And what she did is nag-duck, cover and hold siya. So hindi ko naman siya tinuruan. And so ang laki talaga ng epekto ng quarterly earthquake drill na ginagawa ng NDRRMC. And that's the reason why we're saying now we're more prepared now than say 20 or 30 years ago because of these drills. Second, yung DILG natin have crafted this Operation Listo to help the LGUs prepare for volcanic eruption, for earthquakes, and for tsunamis. And then kami naman sa PHIVOLCS, we have stepped up our efforts to again map the aquifalls, and we do information dissemination campaigns, and we have apps right now na people can easily access. We have the Hazard Hunter PH. Hazard Hunter PH, if you just Google it, makikita mo doon what would be the different hazards in your area. Volcanic hazards, earthquake hazards, even hydromet hazards. The data came from PACASA and MGB. So just one click lang, wherever you are in the Philippines, or sa bahay nyo, if you want, malalaman ka that it will give you all the how all the hazards. It will give you how far you are to an active fault and what would be the intensity in case there is an earthquake, the maximum intensity that you will likely experience if there is an earthquake. So it's Hazard Hunter PH.
And I think there's also an identification of evacuation sites. For example, yung dito sa malapit sa kinalalagyan natin, I think na-identify itong Muni Golf Course nung kasi open space yan no? Na kung magkakaroon ng collapse of low-level buildings, mga residential, pwedeng mag-evacuate dun sa mga open spaces.
That's right. In the event of magnitude 7.2 earthquake, based sa study po, Metro Manila will be separated into 4 sectors. So again, with the west, east, north, south. And sa western side, we have Metro Manila, Malabon, and I think Navotas. And the designated evacuation center would be the Intramuros. Sa east naman would be Pasig and Rizal. And Pasig and Marikina, I think. And the designated evacuation area would be the Ultra. And then dito sa north, it would be yung sa Quezon City area, it would be Veterans Hospital as well as University of the Philippines. And dito sa south, it would be the Villamor Air Base. Those are the designated evacuation areas.
Director, I live in along Katipunan. Okay, the West Valley Fault is just I think at the back of Ateneo.
Oh, yes, that's right.
You know, I understand there's one building at Ateneo that has already been removed.
Protected by the fault.
Yes. What's the danger? There are tall buildings along Katipunan. And there's a new one there. I mean, there's also a high-end, a very high-end development there.
High-rise condominiums.
I will not mention the name. That one is, you mentioned it already, but there's another much high-end development, no? So, is it correct and wise and justified to issue building permits to these developments?
Yung sa amin naman sa PHIVOLCS, as long as it's not located on top of an active fault, yun yung pinagbabawalan na. Well, nirecommend namin na huwag bigyan. You're not supposed to construct on top of an active fault. Yung sa buffer zone namin will be 5 meters from both sides of the trace of an active fault. So, say, if you're 10 meters away from the trace of the active fault, that's considered safe. As long as you're not standing or you're not constructing on top of an active fault. Now, ang kailangan natin pag-igihan would be how the buildings would respond to strong shaking. Kasi nga, even if you're far away from the trace of an active fault, kasi people would think, uy, wala naman kami doon sa, we're not located on top of an active fault, malayo kami. But kapag hindi naman maganda yung pagkagawa ng bahay or yung structure, it would still collapse because the expected intensity for a magnitude 7.2 earthquake would be intensity 8. So even if you're far from the active fault, say you're say 1.5 kilometers away, but hindi magawa, you didn't follow the minimum engineering standards, it would still collapse because the buildings, the shaking would be intensity 8. That would be considered as devastating.
Okay, Sunny, I think we can now ask
Our friends from media to ask their questions from the floor. Sige.
Yes,
Go ahead.
please. The microphone is over there. There. Okay.
Just identify yourselves and the organization you represent.
Good morning, sir.
Sounds.
Sound siya. Ayan. Good morning, sir. Good morning, Director. Nabanggit po kanina.
Can you identify yourself, sir?
Earl Tobles from IBC 13.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning po. Nabanggit po kanina na yung studies are around 2004 and then updated ones would be 2013. I am curious, sir, because dun pa lang sa 2013 study natin, yung collapsing rate, specifically the 13% residential building, is you consider this as heavily damaged po. And right now, we knew that the population is highly more dense compared way back to 2013. So, what's the current mga plano po ng PHIVOLCS into probably updating the study to ensure na yung 13% is still intact as 13%, or probably meron po bang projection na baka mas mataas na to as of now?
That's right, you're correct. We need to update the study. Kasi it was a decade after 2013. But you're right, we really need to update the study because the increase in population natin dito, naging denser than say 2004 and 2013. So we really need an update.
With that, sir, follow-up, safe po ba na sabihin natin as of now na with the projection po considering the population, itong 13% is probably mas mataas na when we update the study?
Okay, sige. Again, when we say kasi, for example, if we quote figures, we would say that based as of 2013, for example. So, mahirap kasi mag-speculate tayo if we have no data. So, we really have to update the study, and as of now, that's the latest data that we have.
Alright, thank you, sir.
Other questions?
Gusto ko lang po sanang we have this app called How Safe Is My House. May 12 questions yan. This is an app that people can use to know if their one or two-story house, concrete house, would be resilient to earthquake. So you just have to answer 12 questions, and then depende po sa answer niyo, may recommendation po na ibibigay.
What's the name of the app again? How safe?
How safe is my house?
Okay.
Sir, where can they access this app?
On the web, you just Google it, How Safe Is My House app, and then it will lead you to PHIVOLCS website.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And it's also downloadable sa iOS and Play Store. Yes, that's right.
Any other question from members of the media?
Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. This is Dan Tingkongko from GMA7. Sir, I understand na, well, you cannot predict volcanic eruption, you cannot predict a volcanic, you cannot predict an earthquake and similar incidences. Pero in lieu of the, I guess, panic that itong VOG recently has caused sa maraming tao, especially those living near Taal, and maybe in references din sa nangyari noong 2020 right before COVID. Kasi January yun di ba? Yung Taal. And then March, the lockdowns happened. So parang hindi na naalis sa face mask yung mga tao from January 2020 onwards. Meron bang possible way to like somehow have indicators of okay, this time mukhang magkaka-VOG ulit tayo, or mukhang may unrest ulit sa Taal? I mean, I understand PHIVOLCS is issuing advisories every so often. Ina-update yung alert level ng mga bulkan, hindi lang ng Taal. Pero meron bang something for the public to, I guess, take with them para parang may advance warning, kumbaga?
For VOG, mahirap po yan kasi ang mangyari, kasi marami pong variables involved. Depende sa prevailing wind conditions. And say, for example, mag-warning kami, okay, the western side, papunta yung VOG dyan, and then hindi pala tumama, pupunta pala sa east. So, wala nang maniniwala sa amin. So, mahirap po yung VOG na magbigay kami ng warning in advance. Kasi nga po, there are many variables involved. Again, prevailing wind conditions, yung temperature, among others. So, ang pwede natin magawa lang ngayon would be, we observe the volcano kapag may VOG. And of course, we have to also have sulfur dioxide measurements na ginagawa din naman po namin. So again, advanced warning for VAG, mahirap po kasi it involves a lot of variables.
Okay, follow up?
Okay, thank you for that. Also, for record purposes, I understand this was already discussed kanina, pero siguro maybe it merits a re-mention. Yung possible perception ng nung ilan na, ay nako, ito, VAG, sasabog yung bulkan. Nako, Lilindol, we explain this ng siguro yung as layman as possible na kung ano yung relation nitong dalawa, if there is a relation. Kasi merong ilan ang sasabi, nako, ilang bulkan na yung nag-aalboroto, di ba? Yung Mayon, Canlaon, Taal, and all the others. Tapos may VAG, tapos nako, baka may mga earthquakes every day, di ba? Na nare-record. Sometimes too close to home, sometimes masyadong malapit sa densely populated area. So there are some people who may be mistakenly making correlations. So ano po yung pwede ninyong paliwanag sa?
For earthquakes, we're part of a Pacific Ring of Fire. And we have 175 active fault segments capable of generating light to major earthquakes. And kahit sa PHIVOLCS, we record at least 20 earthquakes a day. Karamihan dito, mahihina, but sometimes yung mga lindol would be strong enough na maramdaman ng mga tao. So we would expect earthquakes from time to time. Now for our volcanoes naman, we have 24 active volcanoes, and out of the 24 active volcanoes, there is always this possibility na sabay-sabay sila na act up. For example, Canlaon Volcano is on alert level 1 right now since July 2020. Taal Volcano is still on alert level 1 since 2022. And Mayon Volcano is on alert level 3 since June 8 this year. So, expected na po to because as I mentioned earlier, we're part of the Pacific Ring of Fire. And from time to time, we will experience volcanic eruptions and we will experience strong earthquakes. Now, for Taal Volcano, yung VAG na nakita na-observe natin this past few days, would that trigger an eruption? Hindi po. Kasi yung eruption would be, it's a combination of different factors. We have to look at the seismicity. Dumadami ba yung lindol? Because as the magma goes up to the surface, binabasag niya yung mga bato, producing earthquakes. Ngayon, for the past 4 days, wala po tayong lindol na record sa Taal Volcano. Zero volcanic earthquake. So, may mga nagtatanong sa amin, are you not going to raise the alert level from 1 to 2? No, because hindi lang po yung sulfur dioxide, yung basis namin, there are also other parameters that we look at before we raise the alert level, including the number of earthquakes, which for now, for the past 4 days, wala po kami na-record kahit isa. Yep.
So, sir, can you explain, because as layman as we can go for the public, kapag po kasi merong alert level na na-raise sa vulkan, hindi naman po ganun karaming tao yung kaya mong tanungin or just search in the web kung ano po yung credible answers. Although, people who are competently literate can understand what's the difference between the alert levels. But for the sake of the public na hindi po masyadong maalam sa ganitong konsepto, gaano po ba katagal can a vulcan stay in alert level 1 and not erupt? Or once an alert level was raised, it signifies the fact na anytime soon, it could raise up and probably erupt, sir?
Yeah, that's right. Pwede yan. It stays on alert level 1. May mga parameters kaming that would characterize what an alert level 1 is. And may sinasabi pa rin kami that if these parameters will escalate, we have to raise it to alert level 2. So may mga parameters kami for each alert level.
So, maganda po na malinaw na yung parameters ang basihan natin and not the time, sir, not the duration.
No, not the duration. Not the time na it stayed on alert level 1.
Thank you, sir.
For example, Mayon Volcano has been on alert level 3 since June 8 and it's almost 4 months now. October 8, 4 months na. It's still spewing out lava flow. So hindi po namin pwedeng mababa yung alert level, even though yung ibang parameters bumababa na for Mayon volcano.
Okay. Any other question? Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi sir, Rafael Bosano po from ABS-CBN. Sir, nabanggitin niyo kanina yung possibility of Metro Manila going into a lockdown if masyadong mataas po or masyadong obscured yung ating skyline. Paano po natin i-define ito? Kasi yung last Friday, medyo malabo na po talaga siya. And if you're really concerned about your health, that would merit, I guess a lockdown would merit or reducing carbon emissions. Pero alam naman po natin, ang hirap i-reduce the carbon emissions. There have been so many moves to do carpooling, pero hindi pa rin po siya nawawala. So ano po yung nakikita nating pinaka-feasible na solution? Kasi alam natin hindi talaga babawasan yung paggamit ng mga sasakyan.
Yung sinabi kong lockdown kanina, it was just my opinion. Tinanong lang ako kung ano yung pwedeng mangyari. So, again, we have different, we can cite all the probabilities, but that will be the call of the LGUs kung ano lang gagawin nila. Siguro, for example, like what they did last Friday, they canceled all the classes. So, again, that would be the call of the LGUs on what to do in case magkakaroon ulit ng SMART sa Metro Manila. So, mahirap po magsabi ako kasi it's beyond my expertise.
Pero ano po yung nakikita nating another possible way of reducing carbon emission, pati po yung ibang, kasi at this point parang imposible po kung ma-reduce siya, di ba?
Siguro we have to again really follow. We have the Clean Air Act, so kailangan siguro natin pagtibayin yung implementation ng Clean Air Act. Again, that's my personal opinion.
I remember, Director, one time there's an organization that filed a case already against
Cleaner Philippines movement.
the DNR,
Yes.
you know,
We have to fight
for failure to implement the clean.
non-appearance emission testing.
And specifically focusing on
Motor vehicle.
emission testing on motor vehicles, no? What
80% of pollution in Metro Manila
is caused by motor
motor vehicles.
vehicles emission?
And there is such a thing as
What happened to the case?
it's still there. We're still fighting it.
It's still active.
Yes, it is. So
Okay.
we filed it against people, private emission testing centers that are
Mhm.
actually performing non-appearance.
Yeah.
Now, under the law, no motor vehicle in the country
Yes.
can be registered sa LTO unless they underwent past the mandatory.
Mm.
But for 500 pesos, you can register your car.
Without appearing.
This is the cause of air pollution in Metro Manila. DNR states it's more than 80% of air pollution happening in Metro Manila and other urban centers are coming from the unabated emission of motor vehicles. In Metro Manila, there's more than 2 million vehicles here.
Yeah.
That's answered. Sorry.
Yeah. So yung carbon emission, we're talking about it, following your line of thinking, may kapamilya, formerly ABS, talagang strict implementation of the Clean Air Act.
And for public information lang sir, kasi po both are dangerous naman when you're exposed to the prolonged periods. Pero ano po ba yung pagkakaiba? Halimbawa, would we be able to tell if we're simply inhaling pollution from haze and fog? Ano po ang difference ng dalawa?
Yung sa VAG may masangsang na amoy, asopre. So if you've been to like near active volcanoes, may distinct na amoy yung asopre na hindi natin naaamoy sa smog.
I just wanted to add that most of our health problems, are respiratory in origin, and that's being caused by pollution.
The factor that is being measured is PM PM10
But-
particulate matter,
Yeah.
10 microns
Yeah.
below. So that's the one that goes in the lungs
Yeah.
and causes asthma. PM, particulate matter.
Kung sa crime, drug related ang karamihan. Pero sa health issue, pollution ang causing this respiratory problem.
But Director, can I ask?
Yes.
This thing that happened a few days ago in Metro Manila, is this black or is it just purely smog?
Ace.
Is it what?
Haze or mist, or is it volcanic ash?
Yeah.
What is the particular thing that spread out?
It's smog.
Smog,
Smog.
not volcanic ash.
No. It was smog. Smoke plus fog. Yung pollutants natin hindi makaangat because of the warm layer. Colder layer and then warm layer, hindi makaangat yung
Trap.
they're trapped under the warm layer.
So this is more of air pollution.
That's right.
The motor vehicles,
That's right.
factories.
That's right. Yung VAG po, doon lang po sa Batangas area.
So this is the particulate matter that is being
Emitted by the cars and industries.
I think high time to revive.
No, not related to Al volcano.
Dr. Mike, time to revive the Clean Air Act, Clean Air Philippines to again pursue this issue.
Here you can invite next week Secretary Bill OTR, DP Bautista to be our guest here, and we will talk about the non-appearance scam happening at LTO right now.
That's a good.
You know,
That's a good idea.
because after the 2-year lockdown, you can see that the air in Metro Manila and other cities has already cleared because there's a lockdown,
No.
Now-
Less vehicles.
Now, because of the economic activity happening, we have monitored that this pollution again is on the rise, and at the same time, non-appearance
Sa LTO.
testing is also on the rise. Now, we can ask Secretary about this next week. No?
Okay.
We invite-
Yes. That's a good idea. But we have to invite also OCD
Yes,
and
of course.
MMDA because they have something to do with this issue also. Because if it becomes a disaster level, then we'll ask OCD what will be the response. DNR, so DOTR. Okay,
The
so
footprint here again.
MMDA.
And the smog is the motor vehicle, which is more than 80%.
Oh, maybe the DOTR plus LTO.
LTO.
Sige. We'll issue the invitation.
Sir, question.
Go ahead.
Sir, since we're under the umbrella of disaster preparedness na, ang dami pong mga bulkan as you mentioned na aktibo as of now. But as we're preparing for all this, nagbabanta rin po yung El Nino sa ating bansa. This late quarter of the year, early quarter of the next year. So sir, alam naman natin na itong volcanic eruption ay mainit na already na phenomenon. Tapos dadagdag pa yung El Nino phenomenon sa atin which can cause droughts and a lot of damages in terms of our food production and specifically sa tao po. Would the El Nino season this latter of the year have a connection po na mas makakapag-intensify or trigger sa mga volcanic eruptions natin? Or wala naman pong connection sa mga to?
Wala silang connection.
So, for the public information na lang, sir, what can we do in order to be prepared for this El Nino season?
Can we reserve the question for future forums kasi hindi naman within the scope of authority ng PHIVOLCS yun.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Can we ask the director to give us just a general overview, since our friend from IBC that is asking for preparedness, about Oplan Yakal in Metro Manila? Just an overview. They're supposed to be discussed by OCD, but hindi dumating yung representative. Maybe the director can just give an overview of this.
Sige.
General lang po.
In preparation for the magnitude 7.2 earthquake, NDRMC crafted this Oplan Yakal, and isa sa mga nakalagay doon would be, again, it was on the assumption that Metro Manila will be separated into 4 sectors and by designated areas now where people would evacuate, And part of the Uplanyakan also, yung tinatawag ng twinning. For example, since Metro Manila will be affected, hindi tulong yung nearby provinces kasi they will also be affected. So may mga regions na ka-assign to help Sector 1. There are other provinces that would help designated to help regions rather to help Sector 2, Sector 3, and Sector 4. So basically, yun yung, in general, yun yung nakapaloob doon sa Uplanyakan, paano i-operationalize yung disaster, yung rescue efforts, and in the event that there will be a Mount 7.2 earthquake.
Well, later, when we have Secretary of Health, Ted Herbosa, we can ask him question, how will the health personnel from the other regions be mobilized? How will they be brought into Metro Manila or even Bulacan or Laguna and Cavite? With those details. Kasi lahat ng plano, lahat ng taktika dapat nandun na eh. Push button na lang eh. Ito yung gagawin when the thing happens. Because ambulances will not be able to enter Metro Manila. Bridges would have collapsed. Parang nagkaroon ng giyera eh. So how will they be brought into Metro Manila? How will they be able to bring in their equipment, their oxygen, etc., etc.? That should already be part of the overall plan. The rescue operations, what engineering teams will they bring in here? What equipment will they bring in here? Because buildings would have collapsed, and rescue operations would have to be undertaken. All of those points must already be well covered in a disaster mitigation plan. So when we have even DPWH, we will ask DPWH. This is a big issue. This preparation in case the big one strikes. No? So we will plan this in the future Kapihan.
Then, just for info, Uplanyakan is an upland that is under MMDA, and we should invite.
Yes. We will invite. In fact, I already invited the chairman, but he might be very busy. But we will invite him 1 week ahead. So for this next Kapihan, we will still continue about this disaster preparedness. Okay.
I think the projection-
Pollution, etc., the OTR, LTO, related yan sa smog eh. Ano? And then MMDA also. So we will have a big number of resource persons next Tuesday.
And I think, sir, just to add a little information, the projection that they did with the studies under JICA on this scenario, the big one, the first strike of the 7 magnitude scale, 7.2 in Metro Manila, instantly they're projecting more than 50,000 people in Metro Manila will instantly die on that particular, and the entire Metro Manila will be fragmented. Is that right, Director?
It's 34,000, and the entire Metro Manila will be fragmented into 4 sectors.
Okay. All right. I think one more.
Go ahead.
Baka very last question to Director Bacolcol, sir. Ryan po ng PTV4. Director, dito po sa Metro Manila, may haze pa po bang na-observe ngayon? And my second question is, yung VOG doon sa Taal Volcano, may nakikita po ba ng PHIVOLCS kung until when siya?
Okay, so magandang tanong yan. Sa haze dito sa Metro Manila, so far, paglabas ko kanina, mukhang wala na eh. Malaking tulong yung pakulan lately. And ngayon, yung VOG naman sa Taal Volcano until when? For as long as Taal Volcano is spewing out sulfur dioxide, the threat of VOG is always there. It will be a recurring threat. Now, hanggang kailan siya mag-spew out ng sulfur dioxide? Prior to the 2020 eruption, wala pong sulfur dioxide yung Taal volcano. So only after the 2020 eruption that it spewed out sulfur dioxide in great quantities. And hanggang kailan, mahirap po natin sabihin, but if we look at Japan, yung Miyagi-Jima volcano, similar post-eruptive degassing na nangyari, it erupted in 2000, and it took 5 years bago na-diminish yung sulfur dioxide. So we can say probably, hopefully na it will, the sulfur dioxide will eventually diminish with time, and hindi aabot ng 5 years. But again, for Japan, it took 5 years bago nagiging insignificant yung sulfur dioxide measurement.
Okay, may isa pa. GMA.
Corollary to that question, kasi kung yung nangyari na haze dito sa Metro Manila, it had nothing to do with VOG sa Taal volcano. I think that clarification has been made so many times since last week. What then is for a future situation, or possibly kung lumala ulit yung VOG situation sa Taal, what is the probability of it getting into Metro Manila?
Again, depende po yan sa ihip ng hangin. If the wind is towards the north, it would probably, malaking nagkakaroon ng thermal inversion, hindi makaangat yung VOG from Taal volcano, and then may hangin po tayo that goes towards the north, then probably it will reach Metro Manila.
Pero hanggang kailan po yung thermal inversion?
Well, in thermal inversion, actually, according to Pakasa, wala na. But it happens from time to time as we go towards the colder months.
Last na lang po. Yung observation po ba ng PHIVOLCS, yung doon sa sulfur na nilalabas ng Taal, this past few days, tumaas po ba siya or...
Actually, bumaba. Yung nagkaroon ng reports ng nahirapan mga huminga yung mga bata, that was Thursday, in fact, it started Thursday last week. Yung sulfur dioxide emission niya is just around 4,569 tons per day. And mababa po yun. It's just that hindi siya makaangat because of thermal inversion. If you compare this with the sulfur dioxide emission in 2021, umabot po yan ng 25,000 tons a day. And if you compare this with the sulfur dioxide emission from January, for the whole month of January, in 2022, halos 10,000 tons a day average. Ngayon, 4,000 lamang Thursday last week, and nagkaroon ng VOG. So, ang reason doon is hindi nakaangat yung sulfur dioxide natin towards on the upper layer.
Yung today po at saka hapon, ilan po per yung sulfur?
Okay, so ngayon magkakaroon kami ng measurement kahapon. Yung mga tao namin sa Taal volcano, they try to get sulfur dioxide measurements, but umulan. Ano kasi doon is kukuha ka ng measurements na walang ulan kasi sulfur dioxide, again, as I mentioned earlier, madali pong ma-dissolve sa ulan. So, when they started doing the measurements, biglang umulan, so they had to stop it. But, after the 4,569 tons per day in Thursday, nagiging umabot lang po yan ng, I think, 1,000 tons per day. I have the measurements here, but the exact, pwede kong ibigay sa inyo mamaya.
Oh,
Sir,
ipahabol pa.
Yes, Sir Rafael.
Since nabanggit niyo po na nag-spew out na rin siya ng at least 1,000 tons per day. And Pag-asa has already said na nag-change na po yung wind direction. From northeast, it's now south, coming from the southwest. So pag nag-blow po yung southwest winds, ang direction po niyan most likely ay pa-north na po. So may probability ba?
Yung Pag-asa said that malapit na tayo sa amihan. October would be amihan, and it's northeast wind.
Pero yung winds po ngayon ay habagat.
Habagat pa. But transition daw, according to Pag-asa, it's transition from habagat to amihan.
Okay. So with that, sir, hindi pa rin po natin nakikita na dadalhin niya yung asupre or yung bug towards our direction.
Again, wala pong problema kapag may sulfur dioxide. As I mentioned earlier, kahit may sulfur dioxide yung Taal, kapag umabot po siya sa taas, it can easily be displaced, can easily be dispersed. Ang nangyari, kapag may VAG na ma-form sa Taal, kahit konti lang yung nasupre niya, and it would be directed towards the north. Yun yung aabot sa Metro Manila.
Wind direction.
It's the wind direction. And dapat may VAG na ma-form. Kasi kahit may asupre ka, kung wala namang VAG na ma-form, even if the wind is towards the north, wala pa rin, hindi pa naabot sa Metro Manila yun. Walang VAG dadalhin.
Okay, maganda itong ating kapihan, ano ha? Tuloy-tuloy yung mga tanong because this issue affects all of us. Our children are affected, the schools are suspended, and we have to worry and are concerned about the possibility of the big one happening. So, maraming salamat sa iyo,
Sir.
Thank you, Director Bacolcol.
Salamat din po sa inyo, sir, for inviting me here.
Maraming salamat sa
Thank
ating
you to our friends in media.
Kapihan sa Manila Hotel. Nagpapasalamat sa inyo. So, sa susunod na Martes, doon sa Roma Salon tayo. Babalik.
Maraming salamat.
We will have an interesting panel next week. Another interesting discussion. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat.
Depende sa